Okay, I have something I need to admit up front here before we get started today. It's a bit embarrassing, especially since I've played Destiny since 2014, the very first day it was released. Up until last year, I knew nothing about the lore in Destiny and Destiny 2. I know. I've interviewed experts in the field back in the early days of Guardian Downcast, but it never sunk in that I really needed to get into this aspect of the game. I just blew it off. It was for the lore nerds out there. Let them have fun with it, right? Not something I really cared for. That is, until I saw the final cutscene of the Witch Queen campaign story. Did I realize that, might be a good thing to know something about this stuff. So, as I was thinking of ideas for podcast episodes to help new and returning Guardians out there, this was one of the things at the top of my list that I needed to share. But this time, I brought reinforcements with me to help. So let's roll. Hey Guardians, welcome to the Destiny Help Desk podcast, a show that's designed to help you with the little bits of the Destiny 2 online game. Hey, my name is ToddtheGatr, and whether you're a brand new Guardian to the game or a returning player, I'm here to help you explain the constantly changing dynamics of this game, bring you up to speed, and get you ready to jump in and start your Destiny journey. This is the audio component to my YouTube channel, which is ToddtheGatr, 2 Ds and GATR, or you can visit youtube.com/@ToddtheGatr. If you're more of a visual learner or want to refresh your memory of today's subject, you will always find a link to the video pertaining to this topic. Just check in those show notes down below there. If you have any questions for me that I might answer on the show at a later time, please email me at toddthegatr@gmail.com, or you can send me a voicemail with your question at speakpipe.com/Destiny Help Desk. All of these links will be in the show notes down below as well. There are no stupid questions in Destiny, so if you need answers, please don't hesitate to send them my way. This podcast is here to serve you, and who knows, your question just might help a fellow newer Guardian out there. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so you're new to Destiny 2, or you've returned to jump back into the game, and you keep hearing this term Destiny lore and wonder, what is all this about? Or maybe you've been playing for a while, like me, and you've always wanted to know more about the lore, but you really didn't know where to start. Or also, like myself, you thought maybe it was too late to get caught up on all this stuff. Well, I'm here to tell you that 1, it's not too late, and 2, it's easier than you think to jump in, and once you do, you're going to 3, realize that there's so much more to this game than just playing the weekly seasonal stories. I'm certainly not an expert, and if anything, I'm learning with you as we venture together through this episode. Apparently, there are several lore enthusiasts in our community, but I wanted to talk to the members of our local community to learn more about this. So to start, I asked a longtime member of our community who's always been a great friend to ask anything about Destiny lore. And, did I fail to mention? He's our space lawyer to boot. It's my friend, Lazz, aka Lazarus the Lich.
So Destiny lore, in my opinion, is kind of like extra chapters. So when you play through the main story or the seasons, depending on how far you go into the main game, you get story bits from cutscenes, you get it from audio logs and all that in the game. But there's a whole layer of stories that is underneath the main game that you'll get via random lore books that you'll see as pop-ups on your screen as you play through the game and unlock achievements. There's also like websites filled with it and all that. So it's really kind of like when you read through the main book, and then the lore are the extra chapters that are like add-ons that you don't have to read to understand what's going on in the game, but they're always like cool little like side stories.
Another longtime community member I enlisted the help of is also a co-host on the Guardian Hub podcast that addresses lore in the game on the show itself, and also helps explain different backstory questions from our community in the lore channels of our Discord. By the way, our Discord is discord.gg/Guardian Downcast. I'll have an invite link in the show description down below if you want to join in. But he's been a source of knowledge in the lore field, and I couldn't resist asking him some questions as well. It's DesRaven.
Lore in general, it's a term I know, especially in Destiny, that there's like two places I know for sure that the term lore almost gets thrown around memishly. That's Destiny, and that's like a Souls game. Even for those that are unaware, like lore just in general is essentially the story that is not what the game, what you're playing is focusing on. It's usually world building. It's usually, history, like legends and myths, which again, Souls definitely has like an abundance through their texts and stuff. But yes, lore is your quotes on weapons, it's just so much, to be honest. And it formed for the longest time. It was like, it was the most rich like story there was in Destiny. Like speaking back of Destiny 1, like our base campaign back when was, let's say very vanilla. And, the lore is actually where things got like interesting.
If I hear you correctly, when we play this game and we're just piddling around doing the weekly story, right, for the season, the lore just fills in all the backstory for everything, right?
Essentially, yes, especially at this point in time. In the story, there's so many like bases that are filled, because it's almost as if in like, especially in recent time, they've really been trying to like tie together like what could be seen as loose ends, because again, then there's starting to be like so much overlap.
Okay, so we know what lore is in the game, but where did it start? Where did the original Destiny lore begin? Back
in the D1 days, you had to earn what were called grimoire cards. And, like, for example, when you went through the Rise of Iron campaign in Destiny 1, you would find dormant Siva pieces, and each grimoire card had little bits like dormant Siva fallen 3.1. All it said was, that which we were, we are no more. That which we are is undefined. We make our new selves. We need not machines, because we are machines. And it says consume, enhance, replicate, so that sounds kind of mechanical there. But they were little, like, lore bits kind of hidden, almost like a deck of cards, so to speak. But in these cases, they weren't, like, super long or anything like that. They were really just kind of small little tidbits that added to the main story as you play it along. Again, nothing that you absolutely needed to read to understand what your character was doing, what your guardian was doing in game, but it was kind of a cool little virtual collectible card game without the game component of it. So that's, if you were not in Destiny 1, that's how the lore was earned that way. Much more complex route than the current method where you actually see chapters of the books pop up as you unlock them.
Technically, I guess lore started with the old, with what was essentially the first Destiny marketing campaign, which was the Alpha Lupi ARG.
Really?
Back in, I think it was the Bungie forums, where this Alpha Lupi individual would start like posting these weird things, but it all started leading up to Destiny marketing, essentially. Origin of Destiny lore, again, grimoire. They were interesting, like, to say the least, because again, you have stories that, whatever plot that Destiny had just had to be completely overhauled to facilitate just more, I suppose. They got someone in to write these grimoire. Grimoire used to be a challenge to even collect.
I remember you'd have to find what was it, the dead ghost? Was that part of the grimoire cards back then? You had to find these dead ghosts, and they were anywhere, dude.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world. I found them in a Crucible map. I found one in a Crucible map. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, there was at least one dead ghost in Bannerfall.
That's the one.
Yeah, that was our. It was like
character's name was
Festival of Lost.
Yeah,
but no, the character.
It started with an L, didn't it?
Lysander.
Lysander, yes.
Lysander. I haven't thought about it in 9 years either.
That's the first time I've heard that in a long time. Wow.
And yeah, Grimoire just had like ridiculous requirements at times. There was actually in Destiny 1, hilariously, the only reason I went for my first flawless in Trials of Osiris when I was introduced is because it had Grimoire attached to it for a flawless win.
That's right. There was stuff at the lighthouse, wasn't there?
Yeah, just for reaching the lighthouse, you unlocked a Grimoire, and Yeah, that's why that's why I went in for like my first carry.
Well, you talk about these Grimoire cards. Were these cards in game, or was there some other way we had to access them? You know where I'm going.
Yeah, I know. And it was the bane of early Destiny
Yes,
lore. It was the bane because no, they were nowhere in game. In fact, when you collected them, they even told you like visit Bungie.com,
right.
blah blah this.
Yeah.
To view this card or whatever. And yeah, it was the massive bane because it was so easy to like not be interested in Grimoire when you got it. Because I mean, all throughout the beta, I would have to say probably my first month or two, like just playing Destiny, yeah, I wasn't even like I would get them and it's just like, oh, okay, cool, that's a thing. All right, later, let me get more loot. And yeah, so I mean, it took me forever. Well, I say forever, but it was about 2 months, I believe, before I finally started. I finally went to Bungie. Like I think I wanted to say the companion app was also capable of seeing them. So I mean that hasn't changed, but yeah, that used to be the easiest way to see like the lore and the deeper story of Destiny. And yeah.
It was so frustrating, man. I would go to the site and be just a bunch of face down cards, and you would flip one over because you did finally find the ghost or whatever Grimoire to get it, and it would be Fallen 5. I'm like, well, what happened to the other Fallens? What about Fallen 1? It was literally, I don't know if it was deck building. No, I guess it's not considered deck building, but it was literally you were trying to put collections together, and when they all came together, I guess then it flowed. Is that how it worked? Because man, Grimoire really frustrated me in the early days. I mean, did you have to get Fallen 1 to understand Fallen 5?
See, that's the funny thing. No.
Okay.
That wasn't the other bad thing about Grimoire is because again, it's all like world building, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the only Grimoire that was super connected to one another, at least in something of a cohesive narrative.
Yes,
yeah.
Right.
That was actually the lore cards that finally got me into the lore, and that was the lore between Thorn and the Last Word.
Okay.
Yeah, between those two like categories, you would see like certain like names or things start to like pop up between these two areas, and that was the thing that I looked at, and it was like, wait, there's something else here. Now, it still took us a very long time to get, I think, to like Thorn 3 or 4 or whatever, which I think was past Taken King when those finally dropped. Like I said, those early cards, and like I said, the way they meshed and like they had a story, but no, the rest of them weren't all that connected. More so, they were connected by the ideology. If you collected Ghost Fragment Fallen 1 and Ghost Fragment Fallen 4, the only thing that we're connecting them is its story about the Fallen.
Yeah. It's just like
that's about the best you got. Yeah.
It was a snippet, and it was you didn't know what context it was talking in, and oh my gosh, it was so, you'll get a kick out of this. You know the reason I collected lore in those times? Because there was an emblem where you could actually post your Grimoire score. And the more you played the game, the more you just naturally found a lot of Grimoire. And I would always flaunt that. Like, look, I got 5,300 Grimoire score. I didn't even read half the cards, Des. I know. Don't at me. I didn't read the cards. I was just like, it's done. That's another point. That's 5 points.
Yeah. Yeah, 1,000,000%. I've flaunted that same emblem as well. Because again, I was like hooked into the lore at that point in time, but it's also like, hey, like, getting into this gives me this big number. Right. Watch this big number get bigger. Yeah. I mean, that's just
dopamine go up. I know.
Right.
As the guys mentioned earlier, the origin of Destiny lore and how to acquire it was very tedious, and I, for one, was never motivated to learn more about it. It was all about that Grimoire score, which back then was how you knew a Guardian had experienced the game. The higher the number, the better the player. At least that's how some of us saw it. So now that we know where Destiny lore started, I asked both of them, why should we care about lore? Why put all this extra effort into learning more in the lore of Destiny?
Knowing the lore can layer so much more on top of an experience. It is actually a little ridiculous. Let's take like the current season, for example. Season of the Witch. Season of the Witch opens up to what some of us are thinking is the most terrifying thing that can possibly happen. And by that I mean, of course, Eris goes practically full hive.
That's right.
Like, she taps into hive magic, she evolves before our eyes, and she's like really, she's needing tribute to become a hive deity, essentially. Now, why that's terrifying is, a couple years ago, they released an expansion called Beyond Light. Did pretty well, but within Beyond Light was a lore book called The Dark Future, which is the timeline where the Exo Stranger as we know her, that was her original timeline. That's where she's from. So if you know the story of the Exo Stranger,
yeah,
that's not our Elsie Bray. That is actually Elsie Bray from an entirely different timeline. You can think of her as like the quantum leap of Destiny characters, and bonus points if you get that reference. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what has happened to her. She like reaches to this point where the light loses, and she gets shunted back into time all over again to try and find like this path to where the light can win. Essentially, she's almost like a reverse Vex. So in her original timeline, there was an individual that had essentially taken over the hive. This person made Savathun their bitch. Like, no kidding. They were the new witch queen of the hive. And that individual was Eris Morn.
What?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes, Eris Morn basically became, like, in this dark future setting, Eris Morn became more powerful than Savathun in hive magic. Like, she was the leader of the hive whenever they were like facing off against the hive in the fight that happens in the Dark Future lore. She was like its leader. So, and now it's like that future has kind of been averted. But now we flash forward, and all of a sudden Eris is diving into that power that she can most definitely, like again, knowing the lore, you already know that she is capable of becoming extraordinarily powerful in this aspect of darkness. And there's already been teases of her being tempted by the darkness, with Season of Arrivals even had her using a lot of the same like salvation and like key terms that I suppose it was the Witness was using like back when. So I mean, there's a lot of like all of a sudden underlying terrifying things that could happen from this very point in Destiny.
I do think that there is some merit to having like the desire to dive into the lore, mostly because there are a lot of really cool like side stories with characters that you don't necessarily meet in the main game, or it even explores like deeper beyond the gameplay. Like there's a whole lore book attached to one of the dungeons from Destiny, well, more than one dungeon, but to the Pit of Heresy. When you play through it, you understand that you're running through this really dangerous section of the moon that the Hive have carved out. It's attached to like Eris and her fire team and their mistakes, but there's a whole like history centered more around the Hive that are down there and what they're trying to do that you don't necessarily glean from playing through the dungeon. And I think it's cool to be able to have access to that information so that even if you never see it visually in the game, you have a greater understanding for what it is you're actually trying to stop and not just shoot the Hive. Like now you understand why you're shooting the Hive, why you're trying to stop the ritual that they're doing down there.
I'm sure that by now you're probably saying to yourself, okay, I'm down with learning more about this game. How do I find all this stuff?
There's almost no better place to start than the Grimoire anthologies, to be honest. Maybe you don't want to know like the exact history, but I mean, there's like freaking 6 of them now. So I mean,
whoa, hold on, time out. Grimoire anthologies? What's he talking about?
The anthology books, they are fantastic. They're borderline probably the best thing Bungie's decided to release, to be honest. Because again, Grimoire kind of vanished, at least from official Bungie places, so there's no real place to find them anymore. But that is what, as they might suggest, the Grimoire anthologies are kind of for. There's what, 4 or 5 of them
I
now?
have them all. I think I just pre-ordered the latest. Hold on, I'll look. The sixth one is coming. I pre-ordered it. I think it's coming out in the fall sometime. If I remember correctly, they sent me an email. Yeah. Anytime one comes out, I'm pre-ordering it. Even if I'm paying full price, I don't care. As it's kind of a prideful thing I have on my bookcase here.
Yeah, and they're fantastic. Because the first one, Grimoire Anthology 1, Dark Mirror, the entire Books of Sorrow, it's fantastic. Because again, it's the story that kind of kickstarted definitely lore, and so it just makes sense for it to be the first book they released. They're done in a way to be cohesive. They have illustrations which are absolutely fantastic, and hilariously, at least the first 3 or 4 are 98% existing lore with a couple of new things sprinkled in. And that's what I really enjoy about the anthology books, is the fact that they take just a little, and add to it. And it's just great. And of course, the first 3 were organized, curated by Milan. So, yeah, the fact that he arranged them in a way to be very 100% like grimoire. And sure, Books of Sorrow was easy, but it's the second or third one is Fallen? And that's nothing easy to try and I wouldn't have been able to arrange that grimoire anthology at all. Yeah, but thankfully, like I said, as it goes, they're getting more into the more structured lore, like the Braytek stuff. I think Maracena, the Marasov lore, and the Awoken lore are one of them.
Which is, by the way, those books are in the game because they were after.
Oh yeah.
But if you want them all in a nice, organized kind of, like you said, curated, because each book has a theme. It's it has a picture of a Fallen on it or something, and it has a theme wrapping around that concept. It gives some order, at least, to the chaos, And
I love the fact that they kind of look like these leather-bound tomes. It's just fantastic. It's essentially history.
It's what got me into lore. When I read the first book on the Books of Sorrow, I was like, I cannot believe I did not know this. I've been playing this game since the original beta, and I don't know anything about the worm gods and how, all the story of Savathun and where they came from and stuff. Yeah, my mind was blown when I started reading the Books of Sorrow. I could not believe I did not know this from the game, because you would have never known this playing the game. Never known any of this.
No, absolutely not.
It's literally like the game is a puddle, and all the grimoire is like the deep end of a giant Olympic swimming pool. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, for sure.
So I did purchase the very first one that came out because I've always been a big fan of the Books of Sorrow and the Hive history.
Oh, yeah. It seems like they put the lore in some kind of order, like a storybook.
They do, yeah. So the first one being Books of Sorrow, you get the history of the 3 Hive gods before they're Hive gods up through basically entering the soul system.
There's subjects that might get your interest, because again, there's one involving what is essentially the Bible of the Hive. There's one covering a lot of the old stuff that we know about Fallen. Clovis Bray and his entire encounters with Vex and the mysterious entity he called Clarity. No, there's just so many places you can start with those, but I almost think especially the first 3, I mean, I almost feel like they're designed in a way to be consumable even by people that don't know the lore.
That's a good way of putting it. That's how I learned about it, because I never read lore. I mean, the Grimoire cards, I told you, I wouldn't even flip them. I'd flip them over and say, okay, it's 5 points. I'm moving on. What else can I go find?
Exactly.
That's what got me curious about it. And there's so much I don't know, Des. You start talking about some of these characters, I'm like, I don't remember that character. And now I want to go back and know.
So besides the websites, the power of YouTube allows you to, you type in Destiny 2, and let's say you want to look for the Taken King. You want to learn more about Oryx, for example. You type that into the YouTube there, and I'll do that right now. So if I type in Destiny lore Oryx, and then what pops up is probably the most popular lore expert is My Name is Bife, and already there's just 3 videos that have popped up, none of them longer than 24 minutes, that is just him basically reading you the lore, but also giving you his insight into what it means for the greater story. And if you're somebody that's more like visual or more audio in terms of your learning, kind of like people who love audiobooks and not so much like paperback books, YouTube with like My Name is Bife and any of those kind of lore experts on there is a great way to get an audio kind of recap of the various characters and stories in Destiny that you don't necessarily get, again, from playing the game.
I mean, my recommendation, like, it's always the weird one, because I'm pretty much the only person saying this, but it's Ishtar Collective. 100% if you're new. Like I said, it's not as, like, curated as the anthologies, but where it's not as curated, it's also very free, because you can literally just go into Ishtar, you know, you're looking like for something specific, like let's say you wanted to learn about Keitel. Well, why is she a big deal in the Cabal? Why are we kind of working with her and killing everything else? You go to Ishtar, you hit that search bar, you type in her name, and you will be brought everything that is mentioned about her in lore. And like from items to lore books to just everything. And it can be a little overwhelming, of course, if you choose certain like subjects such as Hive. It's a little more legwork, of course, because again, you're going to have to like sift through it, sort through it, and pretty much consume it all to see what you would want to know. But I mean, it is entirely free in both the sense of being unrestricted and monetarily absolutely free. It was probably the best place back in Destiny 1 to even actually go and look at the lore, which, yes, sadly has no connection to Bungie. But it put up, like, Grimoire. It still has old Grimoire on it, the old Grimoire cards. That's so cool. If you missed out on that, you can actually go to, Ishtar Collective. You can read back through all that jumbled mess. They have basically every little bit of, like, flavor text and everything, like, with if it's a Destiny item, but it is like cataloged in Ishtar Collective. And they have fantastic features such as categories you can look through. They will like tag lore on like what it mentions and what it's connected to. So yeah, it's a fantastic place to go. They have tons of like features. They have like a timeline. They were, I think, the second place. But I think they're working with the first place to like really create like a Destiny timeline and like how the events flowed and like where they place and everything. Like it is a fantastic tool, and you can just you can dive in. It is absolutely great. Is where I go. If they don't have a category of what you're looking for, you can just type it in on the search, and it will bring up every instance of what you searched in wherever it can find it in game, whether it be like a mission transcript, because that used to be a thing.
That's right.
And it is absolutely great. Like, Ishtar Collective is like my best friend.
Man, I'm telling you what, the more you talk about Ishtar Collective, I'm going to dive into this and start looking into this, because especially the timeline feature, that is so cool, man. Yeah. I didn't know that was available.
No, yeah, it's a mad scientist goal to try and like, to really try, especially with some of these things. But now, if there's a hint of where it places, they will attempt to place it. And God bless their souls for doing it, because Lord knows I wouldn't want to. It's
kind of like, imagine if you had like a physical library that was filled with only the lore books from Destiny. That's kind of what Ishtar Collective is, especially now with the way that you can find things via category, or even like if you know a specific character from the game that you want to look more into. So it's kind of like having like an index to say like, which shelves in the library do I go to find that character and any history about them.
There are content creators out there that are dedicated to this game's lore. But of course, I would be like remiss if I didn't mention names like Bife from the channel My Name is Bife, who again, like started his entire like content creation career almost on Destiny lore. But no, he is definitely one place. I mean, he's been doing it for so long, and to be fair, he does have a fantastic voice to listen to.
Yeah, he does.
If you're into those deep voices, I mean, you're good to go. So if you prefer to listen, there's definitely places you can go. There's probably other places, but I mean, Bife has been doing it for very long. He has so many videos on like the lore. He has like a 3.5 at least hour video on the history of Destiny from start to certain point that I now forget, but it's like 3.5 hours. So if you've got 3.5 hours to like listen to something, just listen to like the entire history of Destiny. Of course, Mylan Games, who's less archival. And he's more, he does more tap into the theories. I like places that get you thinking too. And yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, Bife to me, My Name is Bife is very, like you said, archival, very exacting.
Yes.
And Mylan is like the man on the street talking about the lore, it seems. You know, do you kind of get that?
Right.
He's kind of like, well, here's what I don't really know what it means, but here's what I think it means. You know, and
yeah, I know he's not afraid, because again, there are plenty of content creators that like pretty much rehash. I would say regurgitate, but that just sounds for some reason that sounds demeaning. But no, they definitely rehash exactly pretty much what's in front of us, and like if things connect, they'll mention it. Mylan, he's like the crazy guy on the subway. He will throw out theories that he either likes or buys, or even theories that he doesn't necessarily think will happen, but just he'll throw it out there just to like start conversation. So
this is where like I'll call it the trap kind of comes in, because I mentioned the timeline earlier on Ishtar Collective, which is great, but you can get like lost in that timeline if you go all the way back to the ancient past and start from there. It's a lot of information to process. If you're just looking for because if you're a new player who hasn't played Destiny, you probably are like curious as to like, why are we in this last city on Earth? Why are all these different enemies on our doorstep? And I think that like the best place to start there would be like the Golden Age and the Collapse, any like lore that have to do with the Traveler showing up. I think that is the history that makes the most sense. All the history is important, like the Hive history, the Elixni/Fallen's history, all of that is very important. But to understand what's going on immediately in the game with like why we're in the last city and all of that, you have to start with the Golden Age and then the Collapse to understand just what the Traveler is, what it's done for us, and why so many other species throughout the universe are trying to harness its powers, much like we have. And by starting there and then just slowly building up to everything like the Destiny expansions, the original Destiny expansions, and then you can kind of go back from there if you want to see, like, as you learn about the Witness, as you learn about the Darkness, you can dive back to pre-Golden Age so you can see what their origin is. But if you start too far back, it's kind of like, it's almost like reading later chapters of the book and not starting from the beginning, which I could see very confusing for any new players.
Hey Guardians, just a quick announcement that I've achieved my first goal of reaching 1,000 new and returning Guardians out there on my YouTube channel as subscribers, and it continues to grow every day. In fact, I've surpassed the 2,700 Guardians mark who have subbed to my channels thus far. My goal is to reach 5,000 by the end of the summer, so please help me in that endeavor if you haven't already. And I wanted to thank you for your support, and hopefully the videos I've released thus far have given you some clarity in traversing all the little things of this Destiny 2 game. As the latest Destiny 2 annual expansion has been released, Lightfall, my goal will be to continue to help new and returning Guardians out there tackle the next iteration of the Destiny universe story and activities. But I'm also going to add some more opinion pieces in there as well. Let me know what you think about those. And of course, don't forget my live streams. So keep an eye out on my YouTube channel for these videos, and the audio components of them will also be released here, right here, on this podcast as well in the future. So if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, ToddtheGatr, what are you waiting for? Jump in there and follow the channel, hit that notification bell so you'll be alerted to those videos when they first arrive. So thanks. I also wanted to mention that you can now become a channel member directly to support my content. It's super easy to do. Just click that join button below the video and it will explain the rest. If you become a channel member, you'll receive a special channel member badge that will be visible whenever you comment on my videos and also when in my live streams on YouTube. There will be a member-only chats on live streams on occasion, and your comments will be highlighted as well. So do me a solid and sign up to be a channel member. Think of it as buying me a shot at the bar once a month, just to say thanks. I appreciate you. Is your head swimming yet? Mine is. Well, at least now you know where to get started and get into this rich history of the Destiny game. And you just thought this was a looties and shooties game, right? Before I let these guys go, I asked them, is there anywhere else you can grab some Destiny backstory?
So there's the YouTube I just mentioned. There's websites like Ishtar Collective and Braytech. But you can actually, in-game or even via the Destiny 2 app, you can actually find all of these lore stories, well, the ones you've unlocked at least. And that's something we didn't really have in Destiny 1 as easily accessible. Here in Destiny 2, there's a whole lore tab under collections and records. You can actually go into lore, and there's the entire library of lore that you've collected. And the downside being that if you haven't collected the lore stories, they won't appear. So it's a bit of a drag there, but it is a great sort of like collection, almost like if you have a collection of comic books, you probably don't have all of the issues of the various characters and all that, but you could probably still enjoy the collection you have there.
Okay, I'm interested. My ears are perked up. This lore sounds really good. It sounds like something I can't miss out on. Well, how do I find it? Yeah, there's Destiny 1, of course, and there's Destiny 2.
Yes.
Is there different in how to find it, or is there other ways?
Actually, there's an entire difference on how to find Destiny these days. You can actually find it in-game.
Wow. Imagine that.
Across your menus. You can dive into like the lore tab, and you have books that you can read, which I think the only thing that you get locked out of, you still have to collect it, of course. You still have to go through, your weekly seasonal activities and to unlock pages as they are released from week to week. But other than that, you're not really locked out of lore also, because I believe there was some time back where Bungie actually, even if you hadn't collected a lore page, you can now read at least the older lore. Pretty much all the lore of Destiny 2 you can read in-game, as your choice, as well as also cycling through menus in the companion app. You can check out the lore there as well. It's only slightly crappy, legitimately.
Right.
These days, it is better to view the lore in-game in many times, because in order to be secretive, Bungie uses a special tag on items in the API that makes it classified. So you can't, it's like if you use the companion app to try and look at very current lore or other things, you can't actually see it, but you'd be able to still read it in game as long as you have it collected. So again, it's almost better now to read it as you get it in game.
I think these lore books are season by season basis, right? Or can I go back and unlock books from other parts of the game? Or I'm asking for myself because I don't know.
That is actually an excellent question.
See, if I wanted to go back and maybe Season of the Chosen, unlock one of those books, I'm wondering if there's a way I can do it, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you have to complete challenges or triumphs in the game during that season to unlock a lore page, right? And you unlock so many lore pages into finally it becomes a book. And lore pages, I mean probably 8 to 12 pages, I think, something like that.
Right, so that's the concept, and so I've got Destiny 2 open right now. I'm actually in the lore tab. So, for example, I only have from the Dusk and Dawn section here is the Black Armory papers. That was Season of the Forge. That was an older season. Right, exactly. If you jump into the game now, you're a brand new player, can't access that season.
Okay.
However, I only have 9 of 18 of the papers listed as unlocked, but I can actually click on, let's say I have entries 1 through 9. Oh, specifically 1 through 9. So entry 10, for example, even though it doesn't show that I have it, I can actually still read the entry.
Really? I did not know that.
Neither did I, Jill, just now. I thought that was hidden and locked away. I'm very glad it's like this, so that way you can still actually read those stories without having to have unlocked it. I guess that's more of just for triumph purposes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. People are getting their triumph so they can get their titles and their triumph score, of course, which is all I care about. Just make the number go up, right? Man, good point. I'm glad you're in game looking at this because I do not have my game up. I have like 5 million windows up. That's going to be so important for new listeners and new players who want to get into lore. Could that feel kind of, because I was kind of defeated. I figured, well, I mean, I've been playing since day one, Destiny and Destiny 2. So I have most of the lore books unlocked because I've played through the seasons. But yeah, I mean, the great thing about the lore books in the seasons is, they kind of expand on the current story, right? They kind of give more background to what's going on when you play the weekly stories. Am I correct there?
They do, yeah. So, for example, let's go back to Dusk and Dawn. So the current seasonal book is called Rites of Passage. Mm-hmm. So right now there's eight pages, but you can only see 4 of them because, yeah, we're in week 4 of the season.
That's right.
So, for example, the most recent page we got was page 4, and it happens to be about Sloane, which is coincidental since we saw her pop back up in a cutscene. Well, in-game cutscene. Mm-hmm. And things like that are kind of cool because you see her on screen. If you've played the previous seasons, you know who she is. But really, after she disappears, it's like, okay, well, we don't really see her. But to know that there's a little bit more background here as to what she's doing during this season, I like that aspect to let us know that they haven't just forgotten about these characters.
I'm glad I asked you that question because I did not know if I could go back and read lore from previous seasons. So if you own the game, you can go back and read the lore about the Forges or probably I'm sure you can go all the way back to, the Days of Gaul and early Destiny 2 game, right? Man, that's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is great. Like the only things that are secret triumphs are things for like the current season because they obviously don't want you spoiling things. But yeah, you can absolutely go back to like there's all 13 pages of the man they call Cade, so you can have a better understanding of why the veteran Destiny players look up to that character so much. Now you can read about him and go, okay, I get it now.
Wow. So as I'm finding out right now with you, accessing Destiny 2 lore has never been easier. I never knew you could access all the past seasonal lore. Until now. Thanks, Lazz and Des. So as I begin to bring this plane home, I had some parting questions for these gents concerning the upcoming final shape, and also these episodes that Bungie is releasing shortly after the campaign finale.
They are 1,000,000% going to pull from lore. That I can tell you that right off the bat. They are going to pull from lore. They are probably going to either tie some loose ends, or like we've been told before, like post Light and Darkness saga. Which is essentially what Final Shape is. I mean, we've been told that saga, the saga we know of, the fight between the light and the dark for this little blue ball, will end at the Final Shape raid. So everything after that is new, essentially. Well, maybe not exactly new, but at least starting to dig into the new. I definitely have a feeling they're going to use these episodes to do exactly what they said they were going to do, or they wanted to do, and that is start to open up our world like even more. That's what I think that they're really going to do for episodes, is just kind of like potentially try and like expand out just a little bit, get us, because they've said before that they want us to really look into like far beyond like our solar system for like some of these stories and stuff. So I mean, it's super vague, but it's also super exciting, like exactly what they can do. The only reason I say they will definitely like tie into lore is because whoever their team is now pays so much attention to like details. For the cutscene where Osiris is drinking dead man tea.
Right. Not
kidding. Yeah. Not kidding. If you think that's a lie,
look it up.
Look it up. It is tragically very true, where they take Nezarek's corpse and make tea. But no, when assigning, like when making that cutscene, they actually found out that there is a particular cup that is significant to both Osiris and Saint. And so they use like that cup. Really? And that's why they like settled on like that look of like teacup and everything, and like I think that's even why it even has a crack in it, because like there was some lore or something that mentioned a teacup, and so they brought that forward. Yes, that 1,000,000% they are going to like tie into lore and either tie in loose ends or like use it to like launch us even further. I can't really begin to fathom what they have planned, because again, with what they've done with the lore is absolutely nuts. I mean, we have these eldritch entities that have been around for like probably millions of years in the hive gods. We have beings that are literal sentient gravity. Again, if you think I'm kidding, I am sadly not. Look up the 9 and have fun, because that took me a while to wrap my head around. I mean, they're literally sentient gravity, and it is like by far the most nutty thing in Destiny. Yeah, so again, we have like all these concepts, but we're like constrained to where we are. So if we open up these doors, there's no telling what like little footnotes they've left to be explored.
It does kind of feel like it should go that way, right? Like it's kind of like how you kind of feel like, because like you get Echoes, you get Revenant, and you get Heresy, and those are the 3 that we're going to be getting. So like it's replacing seasons. There's new story content. It's split into 3 acts and all of that. And it does say with a new act releasing every 6 weeks. So that'll be interesting to see if like, because Echoes comes out in March. So does that mean you get like the first act and then you have to wait for the second, or can you unlock a different act at a time? I'm not even entirely sure. I
don't think they've told us yet, to be honest, Lazz. I don't think they've given us the particulars on episodes. Yeah. They just mentioned on the showcase that there's 3 episodes are going to be coming out after the final shape, because that was the $1 million questions. Everyone want to know if the Light and Dark saga is ending at final shape, then where's that take us, you know?
Absolutely.
Which brings me to my second question. What's the future of Destiny 2 look like?
It's such an interesting one, because the story has been building up to this since the original Destiny, and like the Black Garden, and it's been light versus dark, or now light and dark, for such a long time now that I think Destiny veterans are conflicted over just what could potentially happen next. And I do think that there's enough small side stories that we could still build like off of it. Like maybe there isn't one big bad villain or anything like that, but maybe there's like smaller ones, like Revenant, for example. The first thing that I saw a lot of people making comments about was hearkening back to, was Forsaken, actually, with the Scorn.
Right.
And who knows, maybe Fickrell, who was the big bad Scorn at that time, who was raised, maybe he's back again. Maybe there's more story with him. There's no way of knowing, of course. It's all speculation. But I think what we're going to get is a lot of smaller stories now that are not going to be big 10-year like stories rolling out over time. It's going to be like you get Echoes in March, and by the end of June, like that story is wrapped up, and it doesn't necessarily bleed into Revenant and Heresy, much like we're seeing with the seasons right now, kind of playing into each other.
See, this is the big problem. You're right, man. I've been very conflicted here, because I can't understand. I mean, you talk about Black Garden. That was day 1 Destiny. I mean, that was the final story. Spoiler alert. It's the final story in the original Destiny campaign. We go to the Black Heart and we have to kill it, because it's a simulation. Basically what's happening is the Vex, this is what I've learned from lore, the Vex are trying to simulate the darkness, right?
They're trying to create their own veil, basically. Yeah.
Why do I keep forgetting that word? Yeah, they're trying to create their own veil. This Light and Dark saga, this struggle between light and dark, and it's not even to say that light and dark are evil or good. They just are. But it's hard. I'm really struggling with, once that is over, they've tied the knot and the bow is in place. We kill the witness. The Light and Dark saga is over. I'm lost after that, because this whole game has been based on the Traveler, the Gardener, and the Winnower.
Well, I'll throw a little speculation in there. So looking at Heresy, which is not until over a year from now. So it's a speculation that could easily change within a year. If new players go back and like they jump in today, but let's say they start at Lightfall, then play through the seasons up till now, they'll know that the Hive God Xivu Arath is very much on the mindset of her Hive God sister Savathun is a heretic. Like, she throws that word heresy around a lot. And we've seen no evidence that we fight against Xivu or anything, either in the current season or in the final shape. So it's very possible that after the final shape, she's still around to some extent and is angry because her own sisters are either dead or have turned against her. The sword logic that the Hive follow, we fight the Witness in the raid. We have to assume that we win to some sort of extent that changes something about the dark and the light. So she's losing a lot of this. So maybe finally by the time Heresy rolls around, she's had enough, and maybe we will meet her face to face finally if we don't meet her sometime soon. But that's where my brain goes.
Okay, so let's recap. I first asked our two lore enthusiasts what Destiny lore is. I then asked them, where did Destiny lore originate? Which I still shudder when I think about those days. I then asked why we should even care about knowing the lore, right? Once we established that we might be interested in knowing more, we then got a ton of information on where to start our lore journey. We talked about the websites, the Grimoire anthology book series from Bungie, the lore excerpts that we can read as flavor text on many things we acquire in game, like ships and exotic weapons and armor, and of course, the new built-in lore book system that you can unlock with each season, and the fact that if you missed a season, even though you can't go back and get the Triumph anymore, you can still go back and read the past lore books. Finally, we had some discussion about the future of Destiny 2 and what direction Bungie may be going after the final shape, Light and Dark Saga ends. So I hope this episode, at the very least, made you aware of the deep story that gets buried in the day-to-day game that is Destiny 2. And there's so much more to learn from this game that the writers from Bungie intended for us to know. And it's gotten even easier today to access it. I want to thank my two very good friends, Lazarus the Lich, aka Lazz, in our Discord, and Mr. DesRaven, which you can catch every week on the Guardian Hub podcast. So if you see these two in the Discord community, please thank them for shedding some light on this very complicated topic. Remember, if you want to hear more from me concerning the Destiny game, please subscribe to this podcast to hear future episodes with more information about all those little things that make up the Destiny universe, especially if you're a new and returning player. If you haven't heard, I have another Destiny podcast that I co-host with my pal Hazelnut every week called Guardian Downcast. It's where we discuss all the latest news from Bungie and hear the stories of our Destiny community. GuardianDowncast.com is the place to go to know more. And remember, you can send me a question for the show via our email, ToddtheGatr@gmail.com, or leave a voicemail for me at speakpipe.com/Destiny Help Desk. There are no dumb questions about Destiny, so send them my way and your question may be read or heard on a future episode. Remember, we only get one playthrough in this life, and be kind to your fellow Guardians in the Destinyverse. Take care, and later, Guardian.
Calcified Fragments, the Books of Sorrows back in Taken King was probably the biggest reason for lore popularity surgeons like ever at all.
It's my favorite.
To be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we get used to Grimoire, which are these patchy stories, and we still got Grimoire after that. But no, the Books of Sorrow. I mean, it was a timeline. It was a genealogy. It was a story.
Yep.
It was something you could really finally dive into. But yeah, there was a fight that is in that lore that is like essentially also Cabal history. There's a point in the Books of Sorrow where they're talking about where the Hive are going up against people that use dragon wishes, which for a while was speculated to be Ahamkara, but with no real confirmation up until this collector's edition lore that states that, Callus actually wore and had an Ahamkara bone from that particular fight in history. So yes, and Amon-Ra, which was Keitel's kind of like a big sister. She served Gaul. There we go. Yeah, she was like Gaul's like war chief general, and ended up being the person that Savathun ended up tricking to summon Xivu-Arath. But yes, as you can hear at that point in time, they shared a similar name because of Amon-Ra and Xivu-Arath. Apparently that has been, I'm not sure if this is said in the lore, but it has been said that it is intentional that they shared a name because, again, now we know Hive is in Cabal mythology, so...
You brought up new players, and I think you have to try to think, it's hard to think from the perspective of a new player when you're a D1 vet.
It is, because, I mean, this is the reason why I made this podcast, because there's people out there who are like, yeah, that's nice and all, you're assuming I know all of this stuff. I don't know any of that stuff. It's terrifying in Florida. I've had people that are sleeping in their bed, never to be seen again. The earth literally swallows them up. It's crazy.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Come to Florida, everybody. Promise you won't fall in a sinkhole and die and disappear off the face of the earth.